I can't believe it's 2016 and we still have to talk about this.
Because it's 2015.
9/11. It's the
current year,
everyone, and Justin just can't believe you still disagree with feminism. Don't you want to be progressive, like President Trudeau?
Sticks and stones may break my bones, but names will never hurt me is simply not true.
Look, feminism isn't about hating men. It simply isn't. By saying that it is, you're misrepresenting feminism and not allowing for rational discourse to take place. This is a logical fallacy called a straw man.
This is a logical fallacy called no true Scotsman. Feminism isn't about hating men, it's about equality for women, right? Yeah, not really. Feminism is an ideology with a number of basal assumptions, all of which promote a political and cultural agenda which seeks to marginalize, stigmatize, and criminalize straight white men.
But you see how I said most? That must be proof that some feminists hate men, right? Well, yeah, sure, probably, somewhere. You see, feminism isn't an organization. We don't have meetings.
Bullshit! While feminism itself isn't an organization, feminism has a number of organizations that represent feminists, like the National Organization for Women, which has consistently stood against shared parenting laws after a divorce. Isn't that funny? Feminists hate when women are assumed to be better caretakers than men, except when there's a child support check involved.
But maybe you get confused when we talk about things that relate to being a man. There are a few concepts that we regularly critique and argue against, and it's possible that some of those can be misconstrued as being against men. First up is toxic masculinity.
The feminist idea of toxic masculinity is based on the first basal assumption of modern feminism. Feminists believe that men and women are basically the same, but society teaches men to be different. This is pure fucking nonsense. Everything from brain scans to hormonal balances are measurably different between men and women. So obviously men are going to act differently than women. But feminists believe that masculinity itself is a problem.
So basically, when you're raised as a man in our society, you're raised with certain ideas about what it means to be a man, and some of those are very harmful. Toxic masculinity asserts that for men to be considered men, they have to be violent, aggressive, dominant, angry, and never cry or show emotion.
The reason men behave in all the ways Justin described is because women find it attractive.
If you really want to study women's psychology, study products that are targeted to women. And it turns out that romance novels, whether you're a Mexican consumer or a Nigerian consumer or a Japanese consumer, are almost always consumed or read by women. Now here's the interesting part. The male hero in those romance novels is the exact same guy always. He is a tall prince who's a neurosurgeon. He wrestles alligators on his six-pack. He's reckless, but he could only be tamed by the love of this one good woman. And that speaks to women's evolved fantasies. There is no romance novel where the male archetype is the guy at the bottom from Revenge of the Nerds.
Toxic masculinity assumes all men to be potential rapists by saying that a woman who is dressed a certain way was asking for it, as if men can't resist the temptation to rape someone when they see a little bit of skin.
That fucking irony. Masculinity is bad because men aren't all rapists, but we need to destroy due process because most men are potential rapists. Fucking hypocrite.
This is bad for everyone. It's bad for women and other gender minorities who are often the victims of toxic masculinity-fueled violence.
The majority of violence is actually committed against men, not women. Isn't viewing women as always the victim and men as always violent pretty sexist of you? But don't let facts get in the way of your victim narrative, you fucking hypocrite.
Second is the patriarchy, the big scary word that's always associated with feminism.
gentlemen.
Shh. Alright everyone, quiet down. The first annual patriarchy meeting is being called to order now, with leading patriarch Kanye West presiding. Now, Kanye, I see we have a plan to set up a shadow organization that will control all of civilization through this sort of brainwashing technique, to the benefit of men and the clear detriment of women, but, some of these plans seem a little contradictory. You want us to set up a society where men are 20 times as likely to die at work than women. Men are much more likely to be homeless than women. Men are more likely to go to prison than women. Men are more likely to be raped than women when you account for prison rape. Women will get the right to vote but will still not have to sign up for the draft 100 years later, and will let feminism, a movement for women's rights, exist, and they'll constantly be trying to call us out. I mean, what's the deal? This doesn't really seem like a patriarchy at all.
It's in my code. Have y'all ever seen Wreck-It Ralph?
I mean,
remember? You remember how
what?
that girl
Okay.
in there, the people that was racing, they were, yeah, she was the glitch.
Yeah.
You telling me they don't look at me like the motherfucking glitch? You telling me people don't look at Kanye West like the glitch right now? And she was on the side of the video game.
When feminists talk about dismantling the patriarchy or destroying the patriarchy, we aren't talking about destroying men. We're talking about achieving equality through justice.
Achieving equality through justice. Well, that's an Orwellian way of spelling affirmative action. When you measure equality by equality of results and not equality of opportunity, the result is communism. But feminism is cultural Marxism, so I guess that makes sense.
Third is gender roles, which you've pretty clearly seen laid out if you've ever been to a toy store. Blue is for boys, pink is for girls. Guns, tanks, and cars are for boys. Dolls, flowers, and makeup are for girls.
Gender roles exist because men and women are born different. Even children and the children of related species will tend to play with gendered toys. This is because men and women are different. I know you'd like to live in a gender-neutral Marxist fairyland where biology doesn't exist, but basically go fuck yourself, move to Sweden.
Men are supposed to be dominant, and women are supposed to be submissive.
I don't really know why feminists are so obsessed with the idea that masculinity is inherently dominant and that femininity is inherently submissive. To me, they seem completely complementary, and I think a lot of people think that way as well. Femininity picks up where masculinity drops the ball, and vice versa. It's not this hierarchy. You keep insisting there's a hierarchy in gender. There isn't.
Fourth is sexism, which you've definitely heard of. Sexism is the institutionalized discrimination against a gender or genders. Because it has to be institutionalized, that is, built into our societal systems, you can only be sexist against women or other gender minorities.
Motherfuckers, come on, 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 motherfuckers, come on. I got 7 Mac 11s, about 8 38s, 9 9s, 10 Mac 10s, the shits never end. You can't touch my britches, even if you had MC Hammer and them 357 bitches. Biggie Smalls, a million.
Yeah, there are people who will argue that you can be sexist against men, but that's an unnecessarily defensive argument over semantics.
The mansion, the yacht, the 2 weed spots, the 2 hot blocks. That's how I got the weed spot. I shot bread in the head, took the bread and the lamb spread.
Does sexism require institutional backing? I would say yes, and because of that, only gender minorities, including women, face sexism, while men can still face discrimination.
So, wait a minute. Men can face discrimination because of their gender. But this isn't gender discrimination because sexism has to come from an institution. Despite the fact that the definition of sexism in every major dictionary is discrimination based on gender. Are you fucking mental?
What I mean by that is how sexism is baked into the very foundation of everything that we do. It's how most characters in any show or a movie are men. It's how women are catcalled and harassed on the streets daily. And it's how women are paid less than men for doing the same work.
The wage gap is simply the average earnings of men and women working full-time. It does not count for different job positions, hours worked, or different jobs. It has nothing to do with the same job. It has nothing to do with discrimination.
When we say that we hate sexism, we mean that we hate how discrimination so negatively affects us. This doesn't mean that we hate men or that all men are sexist. It just means that we hate the discriminatory actions against us.
But you just don't give a fuck when it happens to men.
Fifth is male privilege, which goes hand in hand with sexism.
Male privilege is a combination of two principles, the apex fallacy and cultural Marxism. The apex fallacy is a form of sampling bias or cherry picking. Feminists look at all of the rich, powerful CEOs and assume that because they're mostly men, that men everywhere must have the same kind of power. This is despite clear evidence to the contrary, like the fact that a majority of college degrees are issued to women, that men die at work much more than women, and men are much more likely to be homeless than women. Cultural Marxism is much like regular Marxism, except instead of the bourgeoisie and the proletariat, it focuses on straight white men and so-called minorities. Cultural Marxism assumes that all successful white men have perpetrated a form of theft, and therefore minorities are justified in stealing from straight white men or disadvantaging them through forms of wealth redistribution like affirmative action.
And lastly, there's misogyny, the hatred of women. This is very similar to sexism in that it's used to talk about things that are harmful to women, but I feel like misogyny has more anger behind it. But I think what really trips people up is that they don't want to be branded a misogynist. Because you can definitely do or say misogynistic things without necessarily being a misogynist. Because you can definitely do or say misogynistic things without necessarily being a misogynist. We're all constantly growing and evolving, and we're all raised with misogynistic ideas in our head. So yeah, sometimes we're going to say or think misogynistic things.
You can think misogynistic things without being a misogynist? Justin wants to control what you can fucking think? Jesus Christ, they're literally policing wrong thing. Well, there you have it. Feminism doesn't hate men. It just thinks that all men are taught to be evil and need to be re-educated, that there's a secret, unmeasurable male Illuminati oppressing women, that biology doesn't exist and is sexist, that you can only be sexist to women and men don't face any kind of discrimination, that all men have stolen from women and women are morally justified in stealing from men through wealth redistribution, and that your normal everyday thoughts, actions, and clothing should be policed by a group of rabid feminist harpies. All animals are equal, but some animals are more equal than others. After all, it is the
current year.
If you like the artwork in this video, please check out the rest of Samajzi's art. There's a link to his Twitter, DeviantArt, and Tumblr below.